One of my favorite things to do whenever I travel to a new city is get a book from wherever I go. And in this video, I want to tell you the 5 books that you need to read before or after your next trip to Barcelona. What's up, guys? Patrick here, tour guide and your guide to Barcelona and more. Welcome back to the channel where I give you the tips that you need to help you best experience Barcelona and answer some of the questions that I get on tours. One of the most common questions that I get when I'm on tour are what are the books that I need to read about Barcelona? I love reading those books about those different cities because I think it helps us understand in a completely different light something more about the city than just kind of walking around. But it also helps us retrace those steps of some of those streets or even our favorite places while we've been there. Barcelona's no exception. With so many books written from all over the city, it's not always easy to know where to begin. One of the first things that I did when I moved out here to best understand Barcelona was I started walking the streets. But I also started buying different books that were taking me all over the city and even at different times to really see Barcelona from different angles. It's something that I continue to do today so that I can give you guys the best recommendations and learn more about the city even now. And so what I've done is I've put together a list of some of the best books that I think you should read both before or even after to retrace those steps so you can understand Barcelona. But before we get into that list, I want to hear with a comment below what your favorite book about Barcelona is. Also, so you know, I'm going to put the titles of those books and affiliate links in the description below so that you can get reading right away. Those affiliate links are going to come at no extra cost to you, but will help support the channel. So I really appreciate it ahead of time. The first book that I recommend to anybody that asks, and my personal favorite, is Shadow of the Wind. It's a book that was written in 2001 by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, which is actually now a 4-part series. So this is really more than just one recommendation. You got 4 to read after you find this one. But this was the book that kind of got me into Barcelona, exploring the Gothic quarter, that kind of Gothic architecture, because it is kind of a darker story as well. Basically, and I don't want to give away too much right here, but it is about a boy who goes to what's called the Cemetery of the Forgotten Books, and that's what the entire series is really called. He goes to the Cemetery of Forgotten Books where he's explained the rules. You can pick one book, but you have to guard that for the rest of your life. Once he reads it, he falls in love and really wants to find out some other books by the same author and realizes that he's got basically one of the last copies left, that somebody's going around and burning all of the books by this mysterious author. This leads him on this kind of mystery throughout Barcelona, through all of those streets, and it's just one that I think is so entertaining, really starts to get moving and gets you all around Barcelona, helps you explore a little bit more. There is another book called The Ghosts of Spain by Giles Tremlett, which he was talking about when he moved over to Barcelona. It's really interesting that he was reading a book that kind of allowed him to go through the Raval, and it was his kind of map while he was sitting just at his house, his map through the city, being able to walk those streets. This one, Shadow of the Wind, was very much for me that same thing and allowed me to continue walking those streets of Barcelona even when I wasn't out actually in them. So if you guys are looking for a great read and one that is definitely all over Barcelona, my top recommendation is always going to be Shadow of the Wind. Now, the second book that I recommend to a lot of people when they ask for more of a historical approach to Barcelona is actually pretty easy to remember. It's called Barcelona by Robert Hughes. It is a big read and it is not a light one at all. So if you are ready for it, go ahead. You're going to be covering the entire history of Barcelona up until around 1926, which was the death of Antoni Gaudí. But it is a book that actually started out as an art book, believe it or not. Robert Hughes is an art critic. He started this book off with a completely different idea and then decided he wanted to tell the entire history of Barcelona, which he goes into a lot of detail, especially in those Middle Ages. But it's something that when I first moved out here, I learned a lot through this book. Gave me a great place to start off and kind of go and explore kind of more of my interest and see a little bit more about Barcelona as a whole. Like I said before, there is a lot involved in it. And when I started guiding, this was actually recommended to me as kind of like the tour guide Bible in English for any of those tour guides. So it's a great place to start if you're looking for a little bit of an overview of everything that is Barcelona. This third book is one that I pretty much talk about on every single tour that I do through the old part of the city. When we get over to the Born in front of Santa Maria del Mar, we get in front of St. Mary's of the Sea. You've got Cathedral of the Sea, which has become a huge success. I always kind of describe it more as like a Spanish Ken Follett, so it's kind of going through a couple generations through the story of a boy who gets into Barcelona and is later going to help build the church. but it's a story of the church and what you're going to see kind of in the background as Barcelona is growing into more of this port city inside of that crown of Aragon during those big Middle Ages. During that maritime empire of Barcelona, the church becomes really important in the lives of the people all around. And it's something we talk about on the tours. It's kind of always known as the people's church, built for the people, by the people. It is a great historical narrative, not only for Barcelona, but just for the story as a whole. Like I said, super popular. It became so popular that it was turned into a mini-series on Netflix of the same name. So if you guys are done with the book and you're looking to kind of extend on that reading, you can always watch The Cathedral of the Sea on Netflix, about 8 chapters that you've got to watch. And there is a sequel to Cathedral of the Sea, which is The Inheritors of the Earth. It's also a nice one to read, but you're definitely going to want to check out Cathedral of the Sea, get a little bit of an idea of Barcelona and kind of take that with you, even before or after that trip. Another book that I recommend a lot on tours when people ask about the Civil War or kind of what was happening in Barcelona is Homage to Catalonia by George Orwell. A lot of times people come over and they've been forced to read 1984, Animal Farm, something like this, but not a lot of people know that he did write about Barcelona during that Civil War. Now, Orwell does come over right at the beginning of that Civil War to fight against fascism, signs up, goes not in Barcelona, he's actually in the front about 3 hours outside, he's in Aragon. I actually have a video about that, going over to some of the trenches where he was stationed at the beginning of the war. If anybody's interested, you can check that out in the link above. But it's a really good book about Barcelona during that Civil War, which is something that at the time it was published wasn't well known about. Realistically, it's really nice just to see his perspective on how Barcelona was viewed compared to maybe some other authors that were writing at the same time, especially different expat authors that were writing as well. I always kind of tell people Hemingway was writing a lot more about kind of Madrid and other places that were there, but in Whom the Bell Tolls, he actually has a line that I'll never forget. It says, during the Civil War, Barcelona was basically a joke, kind of talking about what was happening over in Barcelona. And with Homage to Catalonia, we understand a little bit more of why Hemingway would say something like that, because especially when Orwell was here, and this is what's so great about the book, he actually gets to see this first person. He's able to understand and tell us what he saw during that time when Barcelona really wasn't being attacked by those rebel troops, but there was a lot of infighting going on with the different anarchist groups or the different workers' unions as well. So it's one book that I always recommend to get a really good insight of somebody from the first-person narrative of what's going on in the Civil War. Homage to Catalonia. And the last book that I'm going to recommend is The City of Marvels by Eduardo Mendoza, who is incredibly well known in Barcelona and in the Spanish-speaking world. I don't think this is as well known in the English circles. It is translated over into English as well. I've seen copies and things like that, but it's not as talked about maybe as some of the other books that we have. Safon is writing in more of the post-Civil War times. Obviously, Orwell is writing during that Civil War, and Cathedral of the Sea is much more based in the obvious Middle Ages, which was really big for Barcelona as a whole. But not too much is always written about the 1888 World's Fair, even up to the 1929 World's Fair, and kind of put into some historical narratives as well. So it's a big time for Barcelona, where we've got the main character is going to see all of this through his eyes, where we've got Barcelona opening up to the world for the first time, becoming more of that global city that it is today, really getting that start into the world of tourism as everything's growing, those ideas of modernism. There's a lot that is covered in the book, and it's really interesting to see. There's a lot of kind of legends and myths put in there, both telling you kind of the truth and then also playing off of it as well. So it's a really good one to understand Barcelona, especially as it starts to get to be a much bigger city. And like I said, it's a book that I don't think is as well known, but it's something that was recommended to me realistically my first year that I was out here. I went over to a bookstore and the bookkeeper there was asking me, you know, kind of what was I looking for. And I said something similar to maybe Shadow of the Wind, and this is the book that we came up with. And I'm really glad that we did, because there is not only this, but there's many more books by Mendoza, who might be the best author about books in Barcelona, just in general. So those are the 5 books that I would say you have to read before or after your next trip to Barcelona. I know there's so many others, so if you think that I left something off the list that needs to be in there, definitely leave those with a comment below. There are so many different books to read about Barcelona. It is really one of those literary cities where you've got books about anything and everything Barcelona. There are some others more about football, about food. I'll definitely have to make another list with some others that'll help you understand Barcelona in an entirely different way as well. But those are the 5 books that I think you should start off with, whether you're getting prepared for your first trip to Barcelona, your next trip over here, here, or even just trying to remember those incredible times that you spent through Barcelona. These books take you on incredible adventures. They walk you through those streets where you can remember those plaques that you've seen, all the different bars, the restaurants maybe that you visited, and really just get a good sense and a feeling of Barcelona. So if you liked the video, remember to give it that thumbs up and subscribe for more videos about different books or things that are going to help you get better prepared for that next trip to Barcelona.